Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit BeWellTexas.org.
Welcome to the Gambling Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Money Mainville. How you doing?
I'm good. That was a solid open.
Thank you. It's kind of anticlimactic there. Oh, let's see. We got a bunch to talk about on the Barnett Howard Williams rundown today. We've got Iowa State recap, Kansas State recap, and then we will move into a preview of Arizona. I would assume we record before the Cincinnati game. I've got a bold prediction for you. You can tell me if I'm wrong or if you agree. And then we will do a mailbag brought to you by Matador Transit. And I think that's it. Maybe. Yeah, we'll probably get into something else, I'm sure. We could discuss the rule changes in college football coming up. But I would assume we could do that in another episode. This will probably be basketball heavy. So let's buckle in. By the way, if you need a lawyer money, I know you've had that thing going on, you can call Barnett, Howard, and Williams. Maybe Kyle, because he has that thing that he's missing the show for tonight. If he needs to call Barnett, Howard, and Williams, they don't want to hear from either of you guys in this respect, but I think they're always open to taking your call if you need to call them. They are the best law firm based in Fort Worth, working across the state of Texas. Double Texas Tech graduates across the partners, and just overall a wonderful group of people. They do family law. They do catastrophic injury, criminal participations. I'm not saying either of you need those specifically. Title IX, if you're caught up there, they can help you out. So if you need to know more, bhwlawfirm.com, and they will be on your side, as I'm on your side, guys, in these trying times. All right. I want to start with Kansas State because it was the most recent, and then we can get back to Iowa State and kind of backfill that one as we move forward. But Kansas State happened last night. We're recording on Wednesday. On Tuesday night, if you're listening on another day. And this Kansas State game was, in a word, bizarre. The Red Raiders, I thought, started really well and got off to a pretty good start. Maybe not really well, but I thought they went out and looked like they were going to handle the game, control the game. Maybe not a perfect start. It wasn't, 20-0. But I thought the first 10 minutes they controlled pretty well, keeping Iowa State at arm's length. If you just repeated the first 10 minutes 4 times, it would have been a blowout. Then you kind of just open it up at the end and don't really score, have a couple of turnovers. They make a bunch of shots in a row, which they hadn't been doing. Brendan Housen turns into high school Brendan Housen. The reason he was a 4-star prospect, gets hot. They score 11 straight to finish the first half. They outplay you probably in the first 4 of the next half too, so they won the middle 8. You kind of finally get your feet back, take a lead. They tie it several times. And then the last 8 minutes, You scored 6 and really ran away with it because they scored 2. In the last 6 minutes, I think it was 2-0. It was just a ridiculous basketball game. The Mop Boys for Kansas State could not figure out the left elbow in the second half, and that cost Texas Tech a few times. I'm blaming the Mop Boys. I think you probably just quit dribbling to that spot if you notice that it's slick. Jerome Tang wanted Texas Tech to win. I don't know if he had U.S. currency on the Red Raiders money line or if he's really taken to heart the podcast clip that was shared out of context that he wants to get fired in his second year of an extension and go build orphanages with his wife. But either way, Texas Tech won the game on the road. They're 3-0 on the road in the Big 12 play, 3-2 overall. And we don't complain about 12 road wins is what I tweeted with the Gauchos, but I think there are plenty of complaints to come from this Texas Tech Kansas State game. A lot on the Kansas State side, but some on the Texas Tech side as well.
Yeah, truly just one of the most bizarre finishes to a game that I can remember watching. Not in a good way either. It was not exciting. Grant even said after the game, I think his exact quote was like, to be real, that was one of the ugliest finishes I've ever been a part of, which was absolutely correct. Tech scored 1 basket in the final 5.5 minutes of the game. Kansas State did not score in the final 6 minutes of the game. It was wild. And like, it wasn't just, balls were rolling off the rim and you were getting good looks and you just weren't finishing. Like, you were throwing the ball out of bounds. You were falling on your face. You were throwing it behind guys. Kansas State was not making anything that they saw from the floor. It was crazy. Definitely do not want to relive another experience like that at an end of a basketball game because it was stressful. Knowing that it was pretty much like sudden death. And if anybody could make a basket in the final 6 minutes of a game, then you were probably going to win. And that's actually what ended up happening. But just wild. And I think that tells the story of this whole game for Texas Tech. I agree with you that I think you came out of the gates and you looked strong. I think you had a good game plan. You were getting the ball inside a lot. You were picking apart their interior defense, which I think was wise. Darion Williams was a big part of that to start the game, getting the ball inside, using his strength. But you just weren't finishing there. You left a lot in the paint and on the rim in those opening, 8 to 10 minutes. And then I'm like scrolling Twitter because I'm thinking like, man, it really feels like this should be a blowout already. Like you should probably already be up 20 points and, be able to cruise through the rest of this game with relatively low stress, but you just weren't finishing. And the other thing too is when that's the case, the other team can say the same thing. Hey, there's a reality that we should probably be down 20 points right now, but we're not. We're still in this game. If we can string together a run, we're right back in it. That's exactly what they did. Braden Hausen turned into Steph Curry for like 4 possessions in a row, which was not fun. They go on that 13-0 run late in the first half, which was huge for them. Made the final shot in the first half as the buzzer was going down. Thought that gave them a little bit of momentum heading into the second half. But just wild. You played really bad basketball. It's just kind of the reality of it. I mean, you won the game, and sure, I think there's merit to that, but your offensive rating as a team was the lowest it's been in a game all season. This is not the best opponent you've played all season. It's probably one of the worst Big 12 opponents that you're going to face. And so I think execution-wise, there's a lot to be polished up. I think the game plan was good. I think you got the ball inside and you attacked them inside. I thought your defense looked decent for the most part. I think Coleman Hawkins certainly looked good. I know it's going to come across as crazy, but I think he was kind of having his way with Darion Williams for a while.
In the low post.
Yep, and he wasn't finishing, which is the biggest thing. And that's what this game came down to, was just execution. And eventually you ended up making more shots than them. He wasn't finishing when he was taking advantage of that defensive matchup, and you end up winning the game. But yeah, just a really, really weird game. I think your best player in this game was probably Elijah Hawkins, who compared to the rest of his Big 12 slate did not have his best day.
Yep. Beyond the slipping on those 2 possessions, I think he had a really clean game.
Yeah.
He traveled, I guess, in the first half, but let me say this and see if you agree. This is not what I teased at the top of the show, but there was a moment in the second half where Coleman Hawkins went on a 6-0 run. And the second 3 was wide open, logo shot from Topeka, dead on. And I think it was Christian Anderson maybe that missed the kind of the transition.
The switch, yeah.
Switch.
It was a switch. I remember the play.
That second made 3 was the worst thing to happen to Kansas.
Oh, yeah. He launched one from the logo, like the next possession. It was terrible.
Steph Curry from the sideline corner, volleyball line, fading away the next possession. And he never got back down on the block.
No.
And that's where he was having at least success getting good shots off. He was playing point center the rest of the game. Now, granted, his little pump fake move was getting around guys, but it looked like me doing a pump fake move. I mean, it was so slow, but somehow it was working. Or at least getting beside guys. I don't know if he was getting around them, but that was the worst thing that could have happened to Kansas State, because it zapped all of their momentum after he started jacking up threes later. And they just did never really get back to the post. Max Jones was having a really good game. And then Jerome Tang put in Castillo and he played the final 7 or 8 minutes, the freshman. And Max Jones really didn't get back in there when it mattered. And a couple other players had good first halves, didn't really have good second halves. There was a point in the second half, every offensive trip, when you were scoring, and the announcers were like trying to call BHW law firm with the assault they were doing on Brendan Howson. It's like they are murdering this guy live on television. Nothing's being done. We need to get this guy some help. And Jerome Tang was just like, nah, we're fine. We're fine. They can do 7 switches until they finally get Howson, and then they can go to the rack. It was just an odd game. Jerome Tang looked outcoached in a game that didn't look well coached. And that is just not good for a Kansas State team who 2 years ago was in the Elite Eight, nearly in the Final Four, got bounced in the first round of the NIT last year, and we're having God tell us lineup solutions and all kinds of things with Jerome Tang this year. It does not feel like he's got solid control of that program. And
his quote after the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. All right.
God gives his toughest battles to his strongest warriors.
And look, I've no issue with a man of faith being vocal and forward.
Sure.
With his faith.
Sure.
No issue with that. I just feel like I have an issue with Jerome Tang and how he does it. It feels like a crutch, and it does not always feel genuine. It kind of feels like he's trying to get around some things. Now, this is not a Kansas State podcast. I would assume he's not the head coach next season. I don't know who they go after. That would be a very interesting coaching search, in my opinion, with revenue sharing and everything else. Do they continue to put heavy resources into basketball? Because they've done so the last 2 years and it has not worked. Coleman Hawkins was the most expensive new player in the Big 12 this year. Is that unfair to say?
Probably so. I think he
I
and
know the $2 million number was put forth. I don't know if that's true.
yeah, I think he and Gabe Osabor, who's also not having a good year at Washington, who you were firmly in the mix for until I think he put his number on a piece of paper and slid it over the table, and you probably fell out of your chair. I think they were two of the highest paid players coming out of this portal.
So, and look, Coleman Hawkins probably was their best player last night and has been. But for him to get his success, I think he's more worried with getting his success than team success. Because if he was all about team last night, he'd been on the block. It was an obvious mismatch between him and Darian Williams and him and JT Toppin, and really him and Federico. I think he could have gotten 20 more shots up in the last 6 minutes, and they just would not force it down there because he was on the perimeter offensively.
Yeah. And that logo launch heat check 3, that's coaching.
Yeah.
It's not even him playing hero ball. I mean, it is to a degree, but that's Tang's coaching style. And if you watch Kansas State over the last couple of years, you start to see that. I mean, he is a player's coach. He wants to let his players control the game, and he will live and die by their performance. When you have Marquise Noel out there, that works out in your favor pretty well, and you make a deep run in March. When you have Tyler Perry out there, it doesn't work as well as Marquise Noel, but it certainly works to your advantage at times. When you have Coleman Hawkins chucking logo threes, I mean, as soon as I think Grant called a timeout after the one he made that was dead on. And as they were going into break, they played a replay of him kind of looking towards the fans. He's like, "You can't leave me open. Why are you leaving me open?" And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh man, he's about to put up one of the ugliest shots I've ever seen.
Yeah. And he
You
did.
just know it. And it was bad.
All right, back to Texas Tech. We're kind of going to start melding in the Iowa State game as well. You don't go to overtime against Iowa State without Christian Anderson. And I don't know that you beat Kansas State without Christian Anderson. He scores 8, but the 3-point play there in the second half, maybe I guess one of your last buckets. I don't remember exactly when it was, but the 3-point play, maybe to tie it again. No, maybe you had just tied it. In the next possession, you go back down and take a 3-point lead because of Christian Anderson. That was a great play. There's also another really heady play where he's bringing it down. Nobody picks him up in front of him. So he gets into the lane and then kicks it to Elijah Hawkins. They don't make the 3, but very good decisions you're seeing from Christian Anderson offensively. I think the game is slowing down for him.
Yeah.
And I thought he's looked really good, in the last 4 or 5, but particularly good in the last 2.
Yeah, I think that transition play was something I made note of too. It was really experienced play. I think his defense looked a lot better on the ball in this Kansas State game. I know he had that miscommunication on the switch, but his on-ball defense was good. His hands were active. And then only 2 Texas Tech players that saw the floor against Kansas State did not commit a turnover. One was Kerwin Walton, who quite frankly is just not touching the ball. And the other was Christian Anderson.
Kind of playing hot potato even when he gets it.
Yeah.
Which, if you're going to touch the ball, shoot, man. That's why you're out there.
Yeah.
But I keep asking this, but when does Christian Anderson either get in the starting lineup or, I mean, they're already eating Curran Walton's minutes. I guess it's a symbolic thing to have him starting the game, but at some point that's going to change. I would assume. I'm not the coach here, but I would assume, contrary to popular belief.
I'm very confused about it. I think really all it comes down to is size. I just think you are weary of having no true wing in your lineup. And quite frankly, I don't know if Kerwin Walton sees the floor if he doesn't start those first 3 to 4 minutes of every half. Does that mean that I think he should continue to see those 3 to 4 minutes of every half? No. But the reality is I think that's probably what is happening. But I truly can't make sense of it. It is bizarre to watch play out.
Bizarre is the word of the day. All right, let's go back to Iowa State just a bit. They just took care of Kansas. But going back to Saturday, you had them on the ropes. You led, 30 minutes of game time, tied a little bit. They took the lead in the second half, and I thought, all right, here it is. Kind of the Keenan and Kel, here it goes. Iowa State, and they're better than you. And then Christian Anderson stayed with you, hit the three, tied it back up after a massive Iowa State three. You were right there. You took the lead back. You had the lead late. There were 2 possessions at the end of the contest where Grant McCasland took timeouts in regulation. They did not score off set plays, but they did get buckets, or at least one bucket in regulation there, and then in overtime they did it again. I don't think that's why you lost. It's just kind of a departure from what we've seen and what we normally see, to take a timeout in every crunch time situation. Like, eventually you're just going to have to trust your defense on one of these, that if you score or have a lead with 20 or less seconds, you just kind of have to know, all right, this is what you have to make the stop. And they're probably going to the basket. So don't let them get an easy layup. But if they needed to take a timeout to set that up, they needed to take a timeout, and that's what Grant McCasland felt in the moment, and that's what he did. But push come to shove, I do think Iowa State is the better team, and they won. But I think you have an opportunity here to go on a bit of a run, not only at home, but in the game. Do you have some overall thoughts on Iowa State and the game they played on Saturday?
Yeah, very different than Kansas State. And it's very weird that you won the game where I feel like you played probably your worst basketball in a while. And you lost the game where I think you played probably some of your best basketball in a while. This was the second highest. Yep, it's the way it goes, unfortunately. Your second highest team offensive rating in a Big 12 game, only being bested by Utah, because Utah. But to do that against this Iowa State team, I thought was telling of how good of an offense this really can be. Christian Anderson was nails. He looked awesome in this game. Holistically, in terms of his scoring, just could get a basket from anywhere. It was really, really fun to watch him kind of play it out. I thought Chance McMillan also had a really good game. Like, there were kind of 2 big things that I thought, or maybe 3 big things that I thought lost you this game. The first was JT Toppin getting injured. He was having his way in the first half. I think he had 14 points, 5 boards, no turnovers or fouls before he got hurt. He was in a zone. And it's really, really telling of how good of a player he is to do that against an Iowa State team that's bigger than almost anybody in the Big 12. He was just feasting. He sprains that ankle, rolls that ankle, whatever happens, And he comes back, he toughs it out, plays 13 minutes in the second half, I think, which is gutsy, and certainly hat tip to him for sticking it out for that. But he was not the same. That second half, he went 2 of 6 from the floor, had 2 fouls and a turnover. His mobility was noticeably different. It really impacts your vertical ability whenever you have any sort of lower body injury. And while Toppin is not yamming on dudes, like he's not catching oops all the time, not even as much as Federico really, the bounce that he gets on those post hook shots is how he's able to get those off. He gets up high and he gets those shots off quick. And with his level of finishing, it's really, really hard to stop that. So without having that bounce down low, I think it really impacted his shot making, and you just really needed his production down the stretch. The second thing was Iowa State had their way in the paint in this game. I think they scored 50 points in the paint, which was plus 20 to you, plus 18, something like that. They just were dominating you. And I think if you watch this team, I think a lot of people will gripe about the perimeter defense. If you go and you look at the advanced analytics and what they're telling you, this is a significantly worse interior defense than perimeter defense, at least in conference play right now. I mean, you are at the bottom of the Big 12 when it comes to defending the paint. And they had their way, whether it was on drives, that was noticeable late in the game, most notably, low post touches, pick and roll actions. They just really, really diced you up there. So I think you needed to defend the paint better to create some separation. And then the last thing, the most obvious thing that I thought lost you the game was the free throws. We can talk about the timeouts. We can sit here and argue all day. I'm just a coach on my couch. It's what I do. I'm not on the bench. I'm not the one that gets paid to make those decisions. So we can leave that to the professionals. But I thought what lost you this game truly was leaving points at the line. I think you split free throws from Hawkins and McMillan, which was really rare. And then Darion Williams also split a pair that ended up being the final dagger. You have to make your free throws, especially at home when it's quiet, which some guys actually don't like. Some guys like it to be at least a little noisier in there, helps them focus, feel more regulated. But in your own environment, you got to make clutch free throws, and you didn't. And all it took was 1 point to lose you this game, and you left 3 on the line in a very, very, very critical part of the game.
Yeah, even if just one of those is different, they have to shoot a 3 at the end. Now, they also missed at least 3 free throws, so it is what it is. But you got to make your home free throws, like you're saying. And there was a moment where Fran Fraschilla's partner, I don't know who he was, said he's trying to get in that 90, 40, 50 club. And I was like, okay, Chance McMillan will miss a free throw in the last 10 minutes of this game. And it came to fruition there. Okay. That's Iowa State. That's Kansas State. Again, Iowa State, and I don't really like doing this in the Big 12, but I'm going to right now. You took Iowa State to the wire, 3-4 days ago. They just beat Kansas by 20-ish. Was it?
Yeah.
74, 50, 57 or something?
Yeah.
74, 50, 17 points. Whatever it is.
17. Yep.
I second guess myself. Look, somebody will beat somebody one day. UCF beat you, got blown out by Kansas. It happens day to day in the conference. But that is a top 10 team playing a top 5 team you just played and not competing as well as you did. So you've lost 2 Big 12 games. But here's my thought, okay? Now Arizona's won, 8 in a row? 5-0 in Big 12 play. I said this Friday that I think if you play well against Iowa State, win or lose, you have an opportunity to win the 5 Big 12 games after the Iowa State game. You win a disgusting game against Kansas State, and I've doubled down. I think you win your next 4 Big 12 games. That would be 5 straight. It's really hard to do in the Big 12. I think Arizona's playing some of their best basketball, but they're due theory, to lose one. You're due to win one at home. The students are back. And then you have teams like TCU, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati in that run until you play Houston on February 1st. So, in my humble opinion, Ryan Mainville, I think Texas Tech's going on in the midst of a 5-game winning streak in the Big 12. If you want to hear Money's answer and hear us preview more about Arizona, you can do so on patreon.com/gambling. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll let you answer and then we'll cut it off.
I think you win 3 out of the next 4.
Okay.
And I think
is it Arizona?
Yeah. It's a really, really, really bad matchup for this team on paper. In the Big 12, in Big 12 play only, they are 3rd in the conference in 3-point percentage, 2nd in the conference in 2-point percentage. They're 3rd in turnover rate, 1st in effective field goal percentage, and they're big.
And some kid named KJ Lewis is playing pretty well.
Yes, he is. And Caleb Love has been kind of stinky all year long, and he was talked about as a All Big 12 first team guy. If he gets going, Lord knows what could happen to you in this game. But I really do think the biggest thing in this game will be their size, especially considering what JT Toppin looks like, whether he's dealing with an ankle or an illness, whatever it may be, a little bit of both. I think you need him at 110% in this game to keep this close. Now, with that said, Kim Pom has you modeled as a 3-point favorite right now.
I mean, you were you opened as a 1-point favorite against Iowa State.
Yep.
So you'll probably be favored in all of your home games. Maybe there's one out there that you're not, but I would assume that you'll be favored in most of them. I think you'll be favored this weekend. Winner will be ranked on Monday. All right. I will break here. We will talk more Arizona on the Patreon section of this episode and get to a mailbag. If you want to listen to those, you can join us at patreon.com/gamblingGauchos. That is patreon.com/gamblingGauchos. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. Thanks for getting this far. And thanks for listening on Republic of Football feed, if you're there. Love y'all.